And from there, you just instantly are connected to that Indigenous person. So I'm honored to say that we acknowledge that we are on, that we support mentoring for youth in traditional territories across Alberta, the many First Nations from Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8, and the Métis of the 8 Alberta settlements and the Inuit people whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. Thank you, Caroline.
Tanya reminded me that I didn't introduce myself. So thanks, Tanya. Caroline Gosling. I am the Community Engagement and Communications Lead for the Alberta Mentoring Partnership. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means later. So our agenda for the rest of this morning is we're just going to do a brief overview of who is AMP and what do we do, looking at what our initiatives are for this 3 years of the Alberta Mentoring Partnership, what our strategic plan kind of entails. And then each member of the provincial coordination team will be introducing themselves and telling you a little bit about what their role is and what their areas of work are. And then we'll just do a quick wrap up. So with that, the Alberta Mentoring Partnership is a coalition model. It's co-led by Alberta Children's Services, Alberta Education, and there's also a community member co-chair who presently is Liz O'Neill, the executive director of Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Brothers Big Sisters of Edmonton. AMP was created in 2008. We have over 170 school and agency members that really cross a lot of different parts of our community and organizations. So government ministries, government funded organizations, youth serving agencies, school authorities, faith organizations, service clubs. And the vision of AMP is that young people thrive through mentoring relationships. And the mission is to work together to strengthen Alberta's capacity to support and enhance mentoring. So AMP doesn't provide direct service for mentoring, but supports mentoring organizations and youth serving organizations that either have formal or informal mentoring within their agencies or organizations, including schools. So that's kind of who we are and really broadly what we do. And again, you'll get more specifics as we hear from the different team members. So in this 3-year plan, so we are currently at just finishing off our first year of a 3-year plan that goes till the end of March 2023. So in our strategic and operational plan, there's really 3 pillars. So the first pillar is strengthening Alberta's mentoring partnerships. And this really includes initiative A, expanding partner engagement, and B, governance and management. And the kind of description of that is that AMP is a connector that links agency, schools, and builders and assists them to work together to advance mentoring. So that's the overall direction of those 2 initiatives. Then the second pillar is expand and enhance mentoring, which really is initiative C, a really big piece of the work. And it's about championing the development and implementation of evidence-informed mentoring initiatives, both formal and informal, to improve the resiliency and well-being of vulnerable children and youth. And then the third pillar is to support evidence-informed decision-making. And this includes initiatives D, E, and F. And those 3 work towards generating and mobilizing knowledge to build capacity for evidence-informed mentoring. And again, as people talk about their work, they will explain in more detail what all of that actually means on the ground and what it means for children and youth. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle.
Hi, everybody. I think I unmuted myself. I hope I have. Anyway, I'm Rochelle Tong, and I've actually worked with the provincial coordination team for the past 8 years now. I am an employee of Alberta Children's Services, and my participation here is sort of part of our collaboration where we all kind of work together through government and community to get these things done. Over those 8 years, one thing that's remained mostly the same is that I take a leadership role on projects related to youth in care and research and evaluation. And in my role with the ministry, I manage a grant program that provides funding to various mentoring service providers. I find that a really great way of staying connected to what's happening across the province. There's a great diversity of programs, and I get kind of intimate knowledge of how they operate and how they work and what their different priorities are. I'm also able to see a lot of different program evaluations and the range of different focuses and outcomes and performance measures that folks use, and get a real sense of kind of what's happening and changing as I get to read those reports and stay connected to what's happening on the ground. I've really found the perspective of being a funder very helpful in a lot of the conversations that AMP has. It helps me to really understand and advocate for the importance of evaluation and research in the field of mentoring, because a lot of the time it's my role to present a case for mentoring and make sure that it's compelling at various levels of government, and make sure that that message endures as we have constantly changing times and changing priorities. So with all those shifts, we want to make sure that mentoring remains a priority and a focus. I also provide advice in an effort to make sure we place realistic expectations on what we think should happen as a result of mentoring, and just making sure that those decisions are grounded in what we see based on the evidence and the research, not on sometimes unfounded hopes that simply providing someone with a mentor will solve everything suddenly. So they try and keep grounded in that research-based perspective. My passion for mentoring stems from being an active mentor for the past 12 years. I was a mentor before I came to my position in government, and that's always been really important to me. And it also helps me have some insight into just the process that volunteers go through, the interaction they have with their agencies, the type of support agencies offer to folks. And also it stays real to me, the meaningful impact of these supportive relationships. So on to some information about our initiatives. I'm going to talk a little bit about Initiative C, but there are many different components of Initiative C. So this is just like one, I think we might call them streams, one stream of Initiative C. And that's around priorities for children and youth from care. That's a really important population for AMP, and we really see a lot to be gained from focusing on that population. There's an advisory committee called the Children and Youth in Care Mentoring Advisory Committee, and that's been around, I think, about 7 years now, and I've been able to be a part of that. And that group has assisted with piloting and establishing a mentoring program that's specifically tailored to meet unique needs of children and youth in care and adults from care as well. So some of the things that that group has produced are the program design and several fairly robust evaluation reports. And those can all be found on the AMP website. I'll put the links to any websites that I reference into the chat when I'm finished. But if you go to the AMP website and just search youth in care, you'll go to a lovely page we have that has kind of the what do you call it, timeline of events and documents that have been produced on that subject. And there's plenty to read if anybody feels like picking up some extra reading. Those documents are really helpful in laying a groundwork, and we really hope that that helps others, whether in Alberta or across the country, to offer similar types of mentoring support and be successful in providing mentoring support to this population. There's much work left to be done in the area. There really hasn't been many forays into mentoring specifically for youth in care across Canada. And there, even in Alberta, there are many more young people in and from care who could benefit from mentors than we have capacity for or funding for within this program. So we really hope to see growth in that program down the road in the future. Initiative E is around measuring and mobilizing impact of mentoring on child and youth well-being and resiliency. So AMP is committed to pursuing research and evaluation that focuses on the impact of mentoring on mentors and mentees. And as Caroline mentioned, we don't provide direct service delivery, so we don't have, as AMP, direct contact with mentors or with mentees. So the approach we've taken is to assist others to increase their evaluation expertise and their capacity usually that's done through training and workshops. And right now we're in collaboration with the U of A's Community University Partnership and also the Evaluation Capacity Network. And if you want to learn more about those, I'll also leave the link to their website in the chat. We really depend on their experts to provide evaluation capacity building opportunities for our partnerships. And they've even been able to develop some training that's specific for the youth mentoring community. There's a cohort that's just wrapping up that training, and they've been receiving coaching from the start to finish of various evaluation projects. And I'm really excited to see their completed projects probably during the summer or early fall, and be able to share some of the information from those with our larger network. And if you want to stay informed about anything happening around those kind of trainings, all the information usually comes through our newsletter. So if you're not already signed up for that, you can also get that at the website. Around Initiative F, our goal is to increase research capacity for mentoring across Canada. So we do have a focus in Alberta, but really mentoring research generally comes from the US, or like that's where we usually end up referencing when we're talking about research for mentoring in Canada. And we really think it's important to establish a base of Canadian researchers that are focused on mentoring. So some really exciting things are happening in that area. After several years of dreaming and planning, I remember attending meetings about this like 5 years ago, where people were thinking maybe someday in the future, far off, we'll have something like this. And in 2020, we were able to formally establish the Canadian Centre for Mentoring Research, which was really the brainchild of Mentorship over the past several years. And we were able to found that in collaboration with the U of A and also Mentor Canada. It's been a very, I think we like to do things in threes. We just get together with 2 other people and co-chair something, have 3 people on board, but it seems to work really well. And I participate on that group as a member of the executive team, as a director of knowledge mobilization. And I'm really excited for the long-term impact that I think this collective is going to have. By establishing the center, we've created a home for Canadian mentoring research. And the goals with that are to work with scholars to generate original research on youth mentoring, to raise the profile of Canadian mentoring research at an international level, to foster connections between academics and others interested in mentoring related topics, to enhance knowledge mobilization and the impact of research findings, and to foster connections between Canadian researchers, practitioners, and policymakers. So really we want to be that bridge between researchers and others interested in research to help make sure that those research projects are really relevant to practitioners and that they're really feeding the knowledge in the mentoring field. We also intend to really encourage and nurture a next generation of Canadian mentoring scholars and be really inclusive of graduation students, providing research and skill development opportunities for them. And we have a belief that all these activities will lead to a stronger research community in Canada and to increase the number and the type of research projects related to mentoring that Canada is able to produce. We had really big plans to do fancy launch things in 2020. Those were all stifled by COVID-19 and not being able to show up anywhere in person. So you will see more from the center, but those will be all in the form of virtual events and networking building opportunities over the next year or so. And those you can find out sometimes through the AMP newsletter, but also the center has their own newsletter, and that's at mentoringresearch.ca, and I'll also leave that link in the chat. I'm going to leave it at that. Those are just kind of broad strokes, high level. If anyone has, more detailed questions or is still curious about those areas, we will leave contact information at the end where you can send any of those questions and we will get back to you. So I'll turn things over to my colleague, also from Children's Services, Scott.
Thanks, Rochelle. My name is Scott Mayer. I am manager of the Strategies Unit with the Ministry of Children's Services in the Government of Alberta. So I manage the area that provides funding from Children's Services to AMP, which is amazing. And I do have the pleasure of managing Rochelle, which is also amazing. And so the work that I've been doing with AMP, I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to the PCT team. So I have only been with them a few months. And my emphasis is really around the youth and young adult portfolio, transitioning from care and for children from care. There's some wonderful work happening with those demographics. From a personal perspective, my involvement with AMP, my background really has been in youth work over the years, and so I have a great zest for mentoring, and have seen firsthand just the wonderful effects that mentoring relationships have with young adults, as well as the adults that are doing the mentoring, or the youth that are doing the mentoring. It's a win-win, really, and very powerful. So I'm super excited about the work that is happening with AMP. And I think that's really all I have to say, so I can hand it off to the next speaker.
That's Megan.
That would be me. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in with us. I apologize. My cat likes to tune in when I'm on a webinar. So if you see her coming and going, that's just she's my work supervisor at the moment. So my name is Megan, and I am similar to Rochelle, a representative from the Alberta government. I come from the Ministry of Education, pardon me, out of our School and Community Supports branch. And so my role within Alberta Education, I'm what they call an interchange partner, or what used to be a secondment. And so basically I'm on loan from my school division to the ministry for a short-term period. So this time it was 3 years. And to provide insight and support and advice from the field to the ministry on specific projects. And this one being mentoring, as well as a few other pieces in my portfolio, looking at how do we support welcoming, caring, safe, and respectful learning environments, of which mentoring is a strong practice for supporting our students. So some of this, my background, just a little bit about me. I am a teacher by practice. I worked as a teacher from K to 12, a counselor and an inclusive education coordinator at a school level. And then I've also worked at the district level as an instructional coach and a program facilitator / consultant. So I've kind of run the gamut, both in schools and school division, just to be able to provide support for students, looking at helping them be successful through attendance, through behavior support, through managing expectations, and providing the right supports for the kiddos at the right time. And so mentoring has always been a passion for me. I mentor myself, both for a little, as well as then when I came to the ministry, we also have corporate mentorship programs. And so we have a school that comes to the ministry, not right now, of course, with COVID, but it's pretty cool to see kids come to the education ministry and they get to ride the elevator, which as a grade 4 student is pretty cool to go up 12 floors. So even just riding the elevator with grade 4s gets pretty exciting. But just to see the growth in different ways and see them connect to adults on a weekly basis that way. I know from my experiences working with youth in a school system, mentoring and establishing and strengthening those relationships is a really important part of helping our kids be successful both in school and out of school. So that's kind of my passion for it, working with schools and community organizations. My role here with the AMP and with the provincial coordination team is to provide that educational voice, because education does provide some of the grant funding for the AMP. We also then sit as part of the PCT as well as the executive team to provide that voice around the educational perspective. And so within that, I also support the Initiative C, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but part of that is mentoring in schools. And so there's a teen mentoring in schools project that I'm currently running, and we'll add in the chat box ways that you can find out more information about that. And so there's that, there's just the mentoring in schools overall, as well as all of the overlap between all of the different pieces that each of us work on. So whether that's our youth in care, our Indigenous youth, our Black youth, our newcomer, refugee, immigrant youth, our sexual and gender diverse youth. And so all of those play a part. And of course, we know that they are all in schools at some point. And so part of that is looking at the overlap of that and connecting schools to mentoring organizations and agencies that might want to do either in school mentoring initiatives, whether that's teen mentoring and peer mentoring or some sort of other arrangement. I also work with some people from Seniors in Housing on their intergenerational mentoring initiatives where they partner different seniors serving organizations and partner with schools to look at the benefits both for the younger as well as the older generations and how that's a reciprocal relationship of both end up being mentors and mentees. And the feedback from that has been pretty great as well. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? So part of the role with the mentoring in schools, we do have a mentoring in schools subcommittee, if that's something that you're interested in, and looking at how we're directing the pieces from Initiative C, which is making sure that we're aligning mentoring to children and youth priority areas. Some of that is around high school completion, some of that is around attendance, and then also the transition into adulthood, which we know schools are key elements about. Part of it is working with our different agencies to make sure that we're supporting our youth in that kind of way. We know that mentoring plays a crucial role in establishing a welcoming, caring, safe, and respectful learning environment, and strengthen those relationships both within the adults in the school and the youth, and often those youth that sometimes are not traditionally thought of as leaders in our schools can end up being the most powerful mentors, both for working with our adults as well as for them also partnering and being a role model for younger students. So we've been looking a lot at both formal and informal mentoring relationships in schools so that we can look at how we can support youth in a variety of ways through natural supports, making sure that our youth are definitely connected to those adults that really are important to them, especially as they're going forward throughout the rest of their life skills. With the teen mentoring in schools project that we're running as well, which is provided some funding for from a private funder, we're specifically looking at building teens' skills and abilities in order to mentor younger students, or whether that's within a 2-year gap or a much larger age gap, but really building those leadership skills with our teens and adolescents in our schools. So one of the ways that we do that from Alberta Education is we also support the availability of credits that high school students can earn for mentoring and leadership within a high school setting. In a junior high or a middle school setting, there are different projects that students can be engaged in and that teachers can offer to build those volunteer mentoring leadership skills for our students as well. And in order to build those relationships that we know are really important for younger students coming up and meeting those teens in the schools, to be able to have a familiar face, to be able to have one more person who they know cares about them. So it's really building some of those skills as we're moving forward. Yeah, I think that's about it. I know that we've been looking at expanding our partners, both within our network, as well as in general. And a lot of my work is looking at how do we get schools more engaged in this, because some don't even know that they can offer credits, and how they might engage with agencies and other non-traditional mentoring organizations, which has been a key part of our mentoring in schools project. So a little bit more about the Teen Mentoring in Schools project. We are wrapping up this year, but you can certainly still attend. We have 2 sessions left, a North cohort and a South cohort on May 11th or May 13th. I'll get Andy to add in, if he hasn't already, kind of a registration link. It is through the regional consortia the Alberta Regional Professional Development Consortia that connects to schools. You're welcome to join either one. It's free. It's paid for partially out of our, but it's paid for out of our project grant funding. On the May 11th or 13th, they are going to be the same session, so you don't have to come to both, but sign up for one. You'll get to hear more about the project, where we're at in its progression. We're ending the second year out of a 4-year, so we've got a little bit more time. And you'll be able to connect with people either in your region or others or other agencies. We're going to look at having Brian Torrance from Ever Active Schools talking about the Indigenous Youth Mentoring Partnership that's available. And both Anaya and Tanya are also going to be on there doing some breakout sessions around some of their work and how that relates to school-based mentoring. And then we're going to talk about the next year. So next year, we're going to be running a summit, which we're super excited about. Look for more details on that. It's going to be coming soon, as well as a number of different standalone sessions and an ongoing cohort series for you to continue to meet people across the province. We've had people across the province as well as across Canada, and a few international people come on just because they want to be able to know what's happening in other areas and how they also might support mentoring in schools based on their areas. Yeah, that's a lot of words in a very short amount of time. So I don't want to take up too much more time. You can join the portal as well if you're not able to join either the May 11th or May 13th session. Please sign up on the portal. It's free. You just have to register so that we can track who's involved in it. There's multiple different discussion areas that you can join around either regions or certain populations or credits or different subject areas. We welcome you to go in, register on the portal, sign up, introduce yourself, and then we'll continue to utilize that portal as a hub and a repository. There's lots of different information and resources that you can access, including the AMP resources around teen mentoring in schools, the Teen Mentoring in Schools Handbook and Activity Guide, the toolkit, as well as a framework for establishing mentoring in a school, as well as a great list of virtual activities that one of our participants has uploaded as to things that they've already kind of vetted and are doing with some of their virtual online mentoring. So it's a great place to go just for more information. So if you have any more questions, there will be some information shared at the end around touching base. One other point is that my interchange is coming to an end at the end of this school year, so end of June. I have to say goodbye to this lovely group of people, but no worries, there is somebody else who's coming on board. So that's the thing with interchanges or secondments, is they rotate us through. So they're constantly getting new and great ideas from people coming in from the field. And I know that the person coming on will be a great replacement, and we'll be able to carry on this work. So there will continue to be a representative here from Alberta Education who can provide that educational context. So. And I will pass it on to Andy, or Andrew Harris, who's our web guru, expertise and help guy. So.
Hi, I'm Andy Harris. Been with AMP for about 2 years now. Just communications, tech support, design stuff, and yeah, I don't really have too much to say. But yeah, I'm happy to be here, and thanks for having me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks.
Anaya, I think you're up.
Yes, I just realized. Hi, everyone. My name is Anaya Ferez. I am the newly hired youth engagement lead with AMP as of 4 months ago. So super excited to be here. So basically my role as the youth engagement lead, we decided to focus on, as a start, to focus on 3 main priorities. That is supporting youth in care, immigrant, newcomer, refugee youth, and Black youth. And so the way I'm a bit of my background is I spent a lot of years, 10 plus years, working in both social services sector and healthcare sector, really around lots of project management, doing work around accreditation, work around quality assurance, and child welfare, around public policies, helping with legislation reviews, yeah, so coming to this work, having the experience that I have found that it's been a perfect fit, given my background. At the same time, something that I've been passionate about and have been glad to find as a priority for AMP is really exploring natural supports. So in terms of the youth and the portfolio that I have, Black youth, immigrant newcomer, and youth in care, natural supports are a big piece. So for example, in the youth in care community, there's a concept about your chosen community or your chosen family, and really around supporting youth who are aging out, and then around also the strategic priority of supporting youth to transition to adulthood and making sure that they have those supports around. At this, also looking at immigrant newcomer communities, where oftentimes they tend to be, choose to be amongst like cultural familiarity, and those tend to be the natural supports that are around. So really thinking about how can we leverage those and really see how we can use them to reach the outcomes that we have around youth, the priority areas and the outcomes. A little bit of the work that I've been able to do so far, excitingly, was most recently completing an environmental scan. I also do the same, have the same role with Mentor Canada. So I do this work on a provincial level with AMP and at a national level with Mentor Canada. So I've been able to complete an environmental scan. If you haven't heard from me yet, a hello and a request for introductory meeting, look out for that email because it's coming real soon. And just introducing ourselves and what we do, and also looking to gain some insights to the work and how we can really do justice to this role, particularly around the population that we're focusing on. Also had recently, but this was through Mentor Canada, but been able to leverage that information for AMP, was during Black History Month hosting a national dialogue on the mentoring experiences of Black youth, and really hearing, we had a panelist of 5 youth from, grade 9 all the way to early career professionals, and hearing about their journey, what the needs are and what they look forward to. And something that we really heard over and over, reiterated over again, was the need to, one, find out more about hidden opportunities, and also learn more practical life skills. So things around financial literacy, things around planning for university. So we had a youth who is now in university, and he said he wished he had someone who told him to take high school more seriously because he wanted to go to university. So it came across that youth are really looking for those practical skills. The other work that I recently joined through AMP, and really this is around not reinventing the wheel and reducing silos and joining where things are already happening, is there's a Black Youth Leadership and Mentoring Program out of U of A, and the lead there is Dr. Bukola Salami, and she's currently working on putting together a capacity building resource toolkit they're calling Mentoring in a Box, for organizations and communities that are looking to mentor Black youth or create programs for mentoring Black youth. So that's some work around, evidence-based research, knowledge, tools and resources, and there'll be some knowledge mobilization in that role as well. Another interest that I have as well with this role is around remote and rural communities. So, just off the top, doing the environmental scan, the first place I went to, or anyone probably go to, is Google, and you type in mentoring programs across Alberta. And, oftentimes we have, and this also relates to the natural support pieces, there's mentoring happening, but because they're not formally incorporated or a formal group, the chances of finding them on Google are slim to none, or even sometimes be down to like page 17 to be able to define a program. So really thinking about how we can even mobilize some of like most recent tech advancements like search engine optimizations for programs. Because I think, you know, if you are a mentor who wants to support and you are living in a rural remote community and you put in a Google looking for mentoring opportunities, the chances of you going all the way to pages 17 are slim to none, right? So really looking how can we support existing programs to highlight their profiles and making sure that we are delivering on the outcomes that we have. And that is a little bit about my work. I'll pass it on to Tanya.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anaya. Thank you everyone for continuing to take the time to listen to us this morning. My name is Tanya Taranj. What I often get asked is how do you say your last name? So I say, think of Toronto, take off the last T, change it for a J, Taranjo. It makes it so easy. Dene First Nation from the Northwest Territories, but I'm currently speaking to you from Treaty 6 Territory, Edmonton, Alberta. I'm really happy to be in Edmonton because there's still lots of snow and like -20 up where I'm from. So very thankful for the spring weather. What brought me to AMP is really I like to say a collision between my personal and my career background. Personally, I became a mom when I was 15 years old and I had to drop out of high school. And I actually moved to Edmonton to join St. Joseph's High School, which is right here, right behind me in my apartment building. And it was because of people there that really mentored me and took me under their wing and guided me that I was able to graduate high school. I was able to go to post-secondary, and I was really able to build myself a career that is focused on capacity building for Indigenous communities and Indigenous people. And I've been an informal mentor to my nieces and my nephews and my extended Indigenous family for a long time. And most recently, I sat down with my niece and we were talking, and she's in her 20s and she's a young mom and trying to find her way. And I asked her, you know, what drew her to me to, you know, to look for guidance. And she shared with me, and she said, Auntie, it's because you made it out. And it really touched my heart because so many of my Indigenous people don't make it out. They don't make it past high school. They don't make it to post-secondary. They don't have the ability to form healthy relationships. So I was really excited to join the AMP team, you know, because it really aligns to my personal background. And professionally, I've been teaching business administration to Indigenous entrepreneurs a combined 10 years, Kiana College in Fort McMurray and UCN in Manitoba. And to me, it's about, you know, bringing up the representation in a healthy way of Indigenous youth in Canada. I have some stats to share briefly in the future, but if we were equally represented in the workforce, in education, in business ownership in Canada as non-Indigenous people, we could raise the economy by $100 billion just with our existing population. And that's where it really excites me to be a part of this mentoring team, because mentoring does make an impact on our Indigenous youth. I'm just going to take a minute here and share my screen. If you just be patient with me. And of course, when I do it, it doesn't come up. So just, I took the time to put together this really awesome little slideshow, and you'll see it comes from my my education background because I really wanted to share this with you. So as the Indigenous engagement lead, really I'm focusing on the 2 work plans, A and C, that were shared briefly. And I'm focused on expanding the Indigenous partner network across Alberta. And that's including Indigenous communities, elders, knowledge keepers, Indigenous businesses, corporations that have maybe an Aboriginal strategy or an Indigenous strategy, and also paying attention to the intergenerational mentoring opportunity with intergenerational with seniors organizations. And it's really exciting to be in the forefront, to be leading this with AMP, because, you know, as Anaya shared, if you Google search Indigenous mentoring or Indigenous mentoring opportunities, there's very little out there. But mentoring has been a part of our being, you know, for centuries. This is how we raised our children. This is ingrained in our belief in preparing for the next 7 generations. So I'm really excited to start reaching out to, you know, these different Indigenous communities, organizations, and businesses to see what's out there and see what we could build up for mentoring in Alberta. And secondly, with Work Plan C, is really aligning mentoring to Indigenous children and youth. It's not enough to say that we're offering mentoring to Indigenous children. I want to ensure that, you know, there's those cultural and traditional knowledges are incorporated, that we're honoring, you know, elders and Indigenous knowledge keepers' beliefs in there, that we're increasing Indigenous mentors for our Indigenous youth, and we're really building upon those formal and informal mentoring partnerships. I did a little bit of research on Indigenous people in Alberta. We have the 3rd largest Indigenous population in Canada. We represent 6.5% of the Alberta population. We are the fastest growing population in Alberta, really in Canada. You know, since 2006, we've grown nearly 40%. Whereas the non-Indigenous population has grown 22%. And not only were we the fastest growing, we're the youngest population, not only in Alberta, but in Canada. And this is really exciting because we still have an opportunity to impact those young people and to bring them into the workforce, to bring them to improve their education, to build those healthy relationships. And to me, it just speaks to how and why I'm here, and how excited and passionate I am about this position. And the reason for this passion is also because of these really sad statistics that I've uncovered in the last few weeks of working with AMP. In Edmonton alone, in our 2 federal prisons, over 50% of the population in those prisons are Indigenous people. Yet we only make up 6.5% of the provincial population. And if you combine all federal prisons in Alberta, we're still at 45% of the population. In Canada overall, it's 30%. So we still have a problem in Alberta where we're not even meeting the Canada level of Indigenous people incarcerated, that we're more so in Alberta. There was a study just in 2019 in the Calgary School Board that 60% of Indigenous students didn't graduate over a 3-year period. That's terrible in 2019. Why aren't our Indigenous youth making it past grade 12? And our suicide rate is terrible. I mean, not only in Alberta and Canada, we know that our Indigenous youth are suffering, and especially during the pandemic. Our unemployment rates are higher than non-Indigenous people. Even our unemployment rates of Indigenous people who actually make it to post-secondary are higher than non-Indigenous. And 30% of Indigenous people as of 2011 didn't even have a high school certificate, diploma, or degree. And if you count the people just on reserve, 50% on reserve in Alberta don't have that. And those stats just make my heart very, 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 very sad. But there's hope at the end of the tunnel. There's change that can come, you know, and mentoring can help that change, because we need these youth to be productive in Alberta. We're going to have great labor shortages in the next 10 years. We need these Aboriginal youth to go to high school. We need them to get an education. We need them to become entrepreneurs and grow our economy, especially after COVID. So I'm excited to support youth serving agencies to increase and align the quality of mentoring to Indigenous youth. And my hope is that, you know, from 3 to 5, 10, 15 years from now, that when we look at a slide like this, that it'll be more equal to non-Indigenous people in Alberta. Highlights of what I've done so far. I've only been in the position since the beginning of December, but man, we've been doing some great things, and I really have to thank my team at AMP for supporting what I envisioned so far for Indigenous mentoring in Alberta. When I first started, Mentor Month was like starting next week, literally. And when I looked at the stats for Mentor Month, it really became apparent that we weren't hitting the rural communities of Alberta with our marketing for Mentor Month. And specifically, we weren't hitting the Indigenous communities. So for those of you who are familiar with Windspeaker, and if you're not, please write it down, Google Windspeaker. Excuse me. It is an Aboriginal multimedia society that's been in Alberta for nearly 30 years. They have 3 radio stations in Alberta, and they have a newspaper. They used to have 2, and one, it's now an online newspaper. And AMP partnered up with Mentor Canada, and we had a campaign in January that ran 4 stories in Windspeaker, 1 each month. Plus we had radio ads that talked about amplifying mentoring and increasing Indigenous mentors in Alberta. And we had 21,000 views over the month of January, which is fantastic. You know, we still have 220,000 Indigenous to target, but 21,000 views is a fantastic start for my very first month with AMP. The next great big highlight is we're going to start an Indigenous mentoring page within our AMP website, where we'll have our Alberta land acknowledgement, and also happy to, you know, assist you with developing land acknowledgements locally across Alberta. We're going to talk about reconciliation and the connection to Alberta mentoring. We'll have resources that I've collected, and also that we're collaborating with other organizations to create. And also focusing on providing links to Indigenous events across Alberta. So where can you take the Indigenous youth? You know, can you attend that powwow? Absolutely attend that powwow. Yeah, once COVID's over, but there is online powwows going on as well. You know, can you go to that round dance? Can you attend that feast? We want to really open up and share these events that our Indigenous youth can take part of, hopefully with their mentors. And just like Rochelle was sharing about the Mentoring in Schools portal, we want to start our own portal as well. And there will be that overlap with the existing portal. That will be an Indigenous community portal where, you know, we could create a network, a collaboration, a community of practice where we can learn from each other, and we can build upon and leverage what we're trying to build for Indigenous youth across Alberta. And also to bring in partners, builders, stakeholders, working with Andy in developing this webpage. And hopefully, you know, with any luck, we'll have it ready to launch by June, and people can start signing up for it. Another highlight is, you know, getting more Indigenous mentors to sign up and developing our comm strategy. We're working with agencies across Alberta, and if you haven't been contacted and you're interested, please email me afterwards. We're getting various agencies from Edmonton and Calgary together and really being innovative with how we can get Indigenous mentors to sign up. A real interesting piece of research that came out of Mentor Canada recently is Indigenous adults are twice more likely to sign up as an Indigenous mentor than a non-Indigenous. So what do we have to do as AMP to encourage those Indigenous adults to sign up? Because they already have that want, that need, desire to do so. We got to give them that ability. We'll be launching the portal. We'll be promoting that webpage. And also, you know, I'm going to be developing some Indigenous Learning Series webinars that not only will be for the youth serving agency, but for the mentor as well. You know, First Nations 101, Métis 101, Inuit 101. What are treaties? What is reconciliation? What's the background of the TRC and the 94 calls? What about the calls to justice from the Missing and Murdered Women and Girls report? You know, really providing, at least if we're not providing the information directly, to give you those great links out there. And lastly, planning for Orange Shirt Day. You know, I think we can really elevate Orange Shirt Day, make that connection to wearing the orange shirt, understanding residential schools, what it means for reconciliation, but then making that further connection of how can we connect that to mentoring and helping those youth get through school, being successful, building those healthy relationships. So obviously I could probably talk forever about Indigenous mentoring and Indigenous, really anything Indigenous. I'm really happy to share any further information. As Rochelle mentioned, we're going to be a part of the webinar coming up in May. So if you'd like to learn more, understand more what I'm working with, Indigenous mentoring and bridging that to schools, please sign up. And if you're not able to sign up and partake, please reach out to me and, you know, help me build this partnership, this network, this collaborative together. And I'm just happy to be here and blessed that you took the time to listen to me today. Thank you. And at that, I pass it off to Caroline.
Hello, everybody. I'm bringing up the rear of these introductions. So my name's Caroline Gosling, and I joined the Alberta Mentoring Partnership as the community engagement and communications lead in mid-November. My background is in education. I worked with Edmonton Public Schools for 34-ish years as a teacher, a consultant, a principal. And in those, over that time, I actually intersected with Alberta Mentoring Partnership several different times. I was seconded, similar to how Megan described her secondment. I was on loan to Alberta Children's Services when AMP first came to the Alberta Child and Youth Initiative table. And so it was just an idea that started to take root. So that was really exciting. And then I did 2 secondments to Alberta Education, both times in the same branch that supported AMP. So in my first secondment, I wasn't directly involved, but did help with the National Symposium's Youth Forum in 2013. And then when I was back again for my last secondment, I actually had the same role that Megan has now, where I supported AMP in a more formal, more formal role. So it's really fun for me to be back now and to, you know, to see even where it's gone in just the 2 years that I've been away from the ministry. So I too have seen the kind of power and impact of mentoring, both as a school principal who had the luxury of having a Big Brothers Big Sisters support person in the school to set up mentoring, community mentoring with people coming in, and also as principal of an elementary junior high where we had a teen mentoring initiative with our older students mentoring our younger students. And it was just so exciting to watch some of our students who I would probably describe as unlikely mentors when we think about who we think would make a good mentor, mentoring their, you know, grade 1 and 2 students, and watching those little guys and girls and folks' faces light up when that older student came to the door to take them for their hour together. And I always think about how for many of those older students, it probably was the only person whose face lit up when they saw them, because you know, some of them could be a bit of a challenge. So I'm really excited to be back in that role. And like others have mentioned, I'm also a mentor. I actually met my mentee at the 2013 Youth Symposium in Banff. And she is a young lady, I think she was 19 at the time and had just aged out of care. She spent most of her time, if not all of it, in group homes. And so it's been a really interesting journey to see how she's grown over the years, and to, you know, she teaches me as much as I teach her. So it's been that's a really great experience too. And although we're not formally matched through BCG Bigs in Edmonton anymore, we continue to see each other. She's not very happy with me right now because I'm not physically in Edmonton. So we are just having to FaceTime. But anyway, so my role in some ways isn't nearly as exciting as everybody else's, but a lot of my role is housed in Initiative B around the governance piece. And so the way AMP is structured is we have a leadership team, which is made up of representatives from different government ministries and different organizations across the province, and also a community member. And I think one of the things that I'm really excited about right now is how AMP has really expanded their definition of what mentoring is, to include more informal mentoring, to include the idea of natural supports, and with that, organizations that support youth in different ways. And our leadership team right now really reflects that. So we have representation from mentoring organizations, but we also have representation from organizations like 4-H and Junior Achievement and cadets. So organizations that support and touch youth and have a mentoring component, but they may not necessarily call it mentoring. So that's our leadership team. And then we also have our 3 co-chairs, and we mentioned where they're from before. So we have Marnie Pierce from Alberta Education. We have Dion Kennedy from Alberta Children's Services, and we have Liz O'Neill from Boys and Girls Clubs, Big Sisters, Big Brothers of Edmonton. So those are our co-chairs. And then we have the provincial coordination team, who is us. So everybody that you heard from today sits on the provincial coordination team. And so we carry out the work of AMP. We communicate back and forth with the executive team and the leadership team, who provide us with direction, who help us with connections, and also help us problem solve when we come up against challenges. They kind of set the direction, and then we run with it. So part of my role is to be that link between those different, up to the executive team, back to the PCT, up to the leadership team, and vice versa. Part of that role is also, just making sure that we're on track, providing support to everybody else, moving towards the goals that we've set. Part of my role too is also housed in Initiative A, the partner engagement piece. So really looking at how can we expand our partnerships, where are our gaps, who do we need to have as partners to be able to achieve the goals and really work towards that big goal of improving the resiliency and well-being of our youth in Alberta. And I don't know, also part of my role as well is around Initiative D, so that evidence-informed resources and tools mobilization. So I think Anaya mentioned this, but both Tanya and Anaya work for Alberta Mentoring Partnership part-time, but they also work with Mentor Canada. And so part of Initiative D around that evidence-informed resources and tools is really how do we collaborate with Mentor Canada around creating and supporting and mobilizing tools and knowledge. So I have regular meetings with the Mentor Canada folks, and we talk about kind of where are the gaps in resources, how can we work together to fill those, what other resources are out there that we can utilize and share. And so that's the other kind of big part of my job. So I am, as I said, I'm really excited with the direction that AMP is moving in, and how the broadening that definition and what that means for the work. And yeah, really excited to work with this amazing team and to see what we're going to accomplish in the next couple of years. So that's it. That's it for me. Like I say, I'm not as directly in the field doing the work that touches children and youth as much as the other PCT members are, but I get to provide that support and hear about all of their successes. So that kind of brings us to the end of the introductions.
Caroline, don't forget
yes.
that Caroline has been an integral part of our Teen Mentoring in Schools project as one of our main facilitators. So I think she's selling herself short when she's saying that she doesn't get to, and she's been such a huge asset in that work because of the experience that she has in schools and her connections. So.
Oh, thanks, Megan. I forgot about that part. And that is a really fun part of my work. So I think we have some time for some question and answers if people would like to do that. And Andy, I don't know if people have the opportunity to unmute or if they need to ask their questions through the chat. Do you know? I don't know how that works on this platform.
I think through the chat might be the easiest. But
Okay. Perfect. So if people have questions that they'd like to ask through the chat, I'm sure one of us will be able to answer those. And while we're doing the question and answer, Andy has a few questions for our participants that really help us around webinars that we plan. What kind of other things are people looking for, and get some more information about where we can go, what we need to do next. There's also the email address on the screen. So if you have questions post-webinar that you would like to get in touch with us, if you've got, if there's things that you're interested in sharing, if you're interested in getting involved in some of the work, or if you just have a question, please feel free to email us and we will respond.
Often the easiest way with getting in touch with us is to go through the mentor.support email, because then we can make sure that all of the people that might need to connect with you can. That way it can go to multiple people rather than just one, because so much of our work overlaps as well.
So team, if you're seeing questions, please feel free to jump in and answer. Somehow my chat seems to be a bit delayed, so I'm not always sure if I'm seeing everything.
Nothing so far, Caroline. I've been checking the chat as well as the Q&A piece.
Yeah, there were a couple in the Q&A, but we answered those. And I think those answers are visible to anybody.
Yeah.
Who wants to take a look?
And Anaya and Megan, your email addresses people are asking for.
We must have done such a good job describing everything.
Yeah.
That we provided all the information people could possibly want to have.
People are just really overwhelmed.
Yeah, I felt like I talked fast and was just this constant stream of information.
That's kind of how I felt too. Just take a breath, slow down.
Yeah.
The great part is that there's lots to talk about and there's lots going on. So that's the positive.
Yeah.
That's the positive part of that.
The other piece too is this is recorded. So if
Mhm.
you want to slow us down a little bit, you can always rewatch it. So Andy, where will this be posted just in case people want to revisit it or share it with people?
Oh, we will put it on our website. Also, when we have the link, I can email it to everybody who attended today.
And will we also put the audio up as on our podcast?
Yes,
Right?
that's correct.
So we just want to listen along as you drive around. That's when I was in the podcast.
Oh. Okay, I see a question. And it's about the mentoring app to be for Mentor Canada. I think that I think that is referring to the e-mentoring platform. And my understanding is that right now that's on hold, and there'll be more information coming out about that down the road when we know more about when that is going to be up and ready to roll. And if I'm incorrect there, somebody please add some.
Yeah, the last I heard about the e-mentoring app is that they're hopeful that it'll be launched in June.
Thank you, Tanya. And we'll, as well as Mentor Canada providing information about that, we'll also make sure that that information is available on the AMP website.
Part of that question is also that Skill City Institute submitted a mentor program for access on AMP website, but they're waiting for a response. So I don't know what the process is. If Andy, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I'll go through and check that and get right back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Not seeing any other questions, I think we'll just wrap up by saying thank you, everybody, for attending. If you feel that there are others that you know that would be interested in hearing about the provincial coordination team and the work that's taking place, please feel free to direct them to the recording on the website. And again, if anybody has questions or would like follow-up, the email is on the screen. And I hope everybody has a really great rest of their day.
Should we all say goodbye then? Wave and say goodbye.
Sure, wave, say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.